The Moving Landscape, Saturday, June 18th. The boy had been reminded of the old Laplander's story because he himself was now traveling over the country which he had spoken. The eagle told him that the expanse of coast which spread beneath them was Westbottom, and that the blue ridges far to the west were in Lapland. Only to be once more seated comfortably on Gorgo's back, after all that he had suffered during the forest fire, was a pleasure. Besides, they were having a fine trip. The flight was so easy that at times it seemed as if they were standing still in the air. The eagle beat and beat his wings without appearing to move from the spot. On the other hand, everything under them seemed in motion. The whole earth and all things on it moved slowly southward. The forests, the fields, the fences, the rivers, the cities, the islands, the sawmills, all were on the march. The boy wondered whither they were bound. Had they grown tired of standing so far north and wished to move to the south? Amid all the objects in motion, there was only one that stood still. That was a railway train. It stood directly under them, for it was with the train as with Gorgo, it could not move from the spot. The locomotive sent forth smoke and sparks. The clatter of the wheels could be heard all the way up to the boy, but the train did not seem to move. The forest rushed by, the flag station rushed by, fences and telegraph poles rushed by, but the train stood still. A broad river with a long bridge came towards it, but the river and the bridge glided under the train with perfect ease. Finally, a railway station appeared. The station master stood on the platform with his red flag and moved slowly towards the train. When he waved his little flag, the locomotive belched even darker smoke curls than before, and whistled mournfully, because it had to stand still. All of a sudden, it began to move towards the south, like everything else. The boy saw all the coach doors open, and the passengers step out, while both cars and people were moving southward. He glanced away from the earth, and tried to look straight ahead. Staring at the queer railway station had made him dizzy, but after he had gazed for a moment at a little white cloud, he was tired of that, and looked down again, thinking all the while that the eagle himself were quite still, and that everything else was travelling on south. Fancy! Suppose the grain field just then running along under him, which must have been newly sown, for he had seen a green blade on it, were to travel all the way down to Skane, where the rye was in full bloom at this season. Up here the pine forests were different. The trees were bare, the branches short, and the needles were almost black. Many trees were bald at the top and looked sickly. If a forest like that were to journey down to Colmorden and see a real forest, how inferior it would feel. The gardens which he now saw had some pretty bushes, but no fruit trees or lindens or chestnut trees, only mountain ash and birch. There were some vegetable beds, but they were not as yet hoed or planted. If such an apology for a garden were to come trailing to Sormland, the province of gardens, wouldn't it think itself a poor wilderness by comparison? Imagine an immense plain like the one now gliding beneath him, coming under the very eyes of the poor small land peasant. They would hurry away from their meagre garden plots and stony fields to begin ploughing and sowing. There was only one thing, however, of which this Northland had more than other lands, and that was light. Night must have set in, for the crane stood sleeping on the morass, but it was all as light as day. The sun had not travelled southward, like every other thing. Instead, it had gone so far north that it shone in the boy's face. To all appearances, it had no notion of setting that night. If this light and this sun were only shining on West Vermenhog, it would suit the boy's father and mother to have a working day that lasted 24 hours.